Hey there everyone, Paler here, and welcome back. Today I have a Hey What's That XCOM 2. Now, before we begin, I'm going to go ahead and stress a few things. One, I'm going to try and make this as absolutely spoiler-free as possible. The only things I'm going to talk about are some very basic overviews of the story, which are explained in the first 10 minutes of the game, and some early gameplay footage. Finally, on my fourth campaign try, I finally managed to beat the game. The game is definitely a step higher than what I was expecting difficulty-wise. It's, even on the normal difficulty, far more difficult than the first XCOM was. So it took me a little while to finally beat it. And while I have beaten it, I don't think I've experienced everything. There are a lot of tech trees that you have to avoid in one playthrough. You can't do it all. So I'm not going to go ahead and say I've mastered this game by any means. That's why this is going to be a Hey What's That video and not a full-blown review or anything like that. So, where should we begin? Well, if you don't know XCOM, let me just give you a quick breakdown of what it is. XCOM is a turn-based squad strategy game. So you go in and you have a squad of 4 to 6 soldiers, and you're going to have some type of objective on a map that is laid out with squares. You're going to move your squad members around, you're going to put them in and out of cover, try to get them in favorable positions where you're going to get shot percentages or grenade percentages, and you're going to try to kill the enemy. And they're going to be using abilities back against you. And you have, your squads can develop different ways. You can have snipers, you have rangers, which are close range guys. But even within the 4 different classes, technically 5 classes, there are trees that you can spec them out. There's all kinds of different ways you can customize your guys. So it's kind of got a bit of like a chess element to it with this squad strategy. This is not a shooter. It's not an action game. If you're looking for something high speed, you're not going to find it here. If you're familiar with the first XCOM, I can come right out and say very easily, if you enjoyed the first XCOM from Firaxis, the reimagined XCOM, go buy this one. If you enjoyed that one, this one takes everything that one did, turns it up to 12, and just makes it better. There's nowhere where I can find that it did a lesser job than the first game. I'm sure there's some people that could nitpick here or there, find some minor flaws with this game, but they're mostly going to just be nitpicking. Across the board, XCOM 2 is a better game. The first element that I think really does make it a better game is within the story, the gameplay mechanics make more sense with what they're doing. In the first game, you are a group of special agents fighting to protect Earth from alien invaders. And at first this kind of makes sense, maybe before you realize that it's a full-blown alien invasion force, when you're just trying to do black ops against them to limit their influence but not try and, prevent them from maybe causing too much chaos, that makes sense. But once the alien invasion force would arrive in the first game, and although this kind of happens after the gameplay actually takes place, there would be a point where the nations would just rally together and fight the aliens with mass military force. That's not to say we'd win, but this squad-based, 4 to 6 soldiers trying to stop this invasion doesn't really make a lot of sense. There'd be a point where, panics happened, hysteria's happened, now we just gotta fight. XCOM 2 does away with a lot of that. And if you've watched anybody's trailers, previews, reviews of this, you've already learned this, but let's cover it again real quick. Basically, the first game we failed. That's the story. The alien invasion came, they have now conquered Earth, they've put themselves in place as a government, and you're shown basically a world where at least a large percentage of the human population has come to be subservient to this alien government, and in some ways they actually like the alien government. The alien government brings a bunch of technology with them and all that. We are now playing as a guerrilla force. We are fighting to regain control of our home planet, drive the aliens away through guerrilla tactics. And in that way, playing as a small squad of 4 to 6 highly skilled operatives fighting a larger, superior force, the story actually makes a lot more sense in conjunction with the gameplay than the first game does. Not saying that your first game was bad, but you get where I'm coming from. It fits better thematically across the board with the story and the mechanics. Beyond that, the story, I'm going to stay away from it. You're a guerrilla force, you're fighting. There'll be a few small elements that we'll talk about here or there, just more how they influence the gameplay. There is much more to the story, but we'll let you discover that as you go on and play it yourself. I will say that, much like the first game, the story, the first time through to see it to the end, is reasonably enjoyable. But after that, on consecutive playthroughs, you're going to ignore the story for the most part. It's just trigger events to keep the gameplay moving forward. For me personally, the biggest improvement that XCOM 2 brings to the board is the variety. Variety in so many different ways that things constantly stay interesting and refreshing. We're talking variety in terms of enemies. XCOM 1 had a decent number of enemies. XCOM 2 takes that and just blows it out of the water. I was counting earlier and I got to like 18 or 19, and I'm sure there's a few that I'm forgetting. And I'm talking 18 or 19 notably different enemies with health pool differences, ability differences, and all of that. In just the first 5 or 6 missions, you're going to come across a traditional soldier, commander soldier, soldier with stun baton, sectoid, the new version of the Hollow Men, and mutants. So that's 6 in like the first 5 levels. And up until the end of the game, they pretty much continue to release them along that path. You know, one new guy about every 2 missions you're going to get. The first mission obviously has like 3 in it in order to get that up and going. But what this does is, throughout the whole game, as soon as you feel like you have a grasp on the enemy and their tactics, suddenly there's a new enemy. And he's got a whole new set of abilities, and it's like, what do I do to counter this guy? And then you're going to see him in conjunction with a different enemy, and it's going to be like, I don't know how to fight this. I don't know what to do. On top of that, what you as a player, your arsenal has also expanded greatly. Not only have the classes all been redone with different abilities, different trees, I mean, some of them are held over, but they've been repositioned and tweaked to make it that your soldiers feel far more powerful than they did before. On top of their increased abilities, you now have a greater variety of weapons that can be customized with their own buffs and debuffs through accessories. Essentially, you can put laser sights and buttstocks on weapons and hair triggers to give them chance to hit procs and all kinds of stuff. There's also special armors, all kinds of armors that have their own abilities to them that you can really, your troopers can become amazingly powerful, robust creatures with a huge array of abilities to go with. For example, towards the end of my last game, and I'm going to do this as spoiler-free as possible, I had a sniper who was able to use a grappling hook to jump around the level. She had a rifle that had a buttstock on it, which guaranteed no matter what, even if she missed, it would do at least 1 damage to the enemy. It had a scope on it, which increased her chance to hit by, I want to say, 7%. And it had a hair trigger on it that, on random chance, I want to say it was 5%, it might have been 10%, her shot would cost no points. So she'd be able to shoot back to back because it wouldn't consume anything. She was also set up with the ability where she could trigger her Overwatch ability, meaning she can shoot at an enemy moving during the enemy team's turn while they're moving. She would trigger Overwatch based on other people's sight, and she would do it without cooldown. So I could jump her up into a place. No matter what she shot at, she was going to do at least 1 damage. Occasionally, she would get a free shot. If the team saw an enemy moving, she would take a free shot at it no matter what. And she also had tracer ammo, which increases her chance to hit by 10. So when I combined that with the scope, I was like plus 15, 17% chance to hit. This one sniper could decimate the enemy team. So while the enemy team has a lot more variety and options with them, and there's a lot more dangerous enemies, your team is also a lot more dangerous. So it's still relatively balanced, but it's more chaotic within the balance, and you're stronger, the enemy's stronger, and rather than it being a pillow fight, it's like Mike Tyson and Holyfield going at it. Just heavyweights battling back and forth. And it's really good. It is really good because of this. I loved that variety. Sure, if I play for 60 or 80 hours, at some point you're going to get used to that. But at least early on, and if I get 60 hours into this game before it starts to become routine, well, that's a hell of a good investment for me, if you ask me. Yeah, so that's that. Another great thing that really happens within XCOM 2 is the agency within the players. I don't tend to be somebody that gets very deep into buying into the characters of my team. It doesn't really happen for me. I'm not big into that. But in the first XCOM game, if you started running low on soldiers, your soldiers were dying off or in the medic bay, you could just hire in random recruits. And it would cost you resources, so you couldn't just have a billion of them, but there was basically a never-ending supply that as long as you had the resources to purchase them, you could bring in new recruits. This is not the case in XCOM 2. XCOM 2, you do have a command center where you can go back to from time to time, and they will normally have 1 or 2 recruits there waiting for you. You can pick up for the same supply cost, but we're only talking 1 or 2. Other than that, you occasionally will find recruits throughout levels. You get missions where there'll be a recruit here that you can go over, and you might get 2 or 3 recruits for completing a mission or something, but you mostly, the troops you have at the beginning, you have to make do with those troops. And as such, those individual soldiers are far more important. You lose a soldier, you've just lost a 10th, a 12th of your force. And that person's very hard to recover, to replace. And that really makes you invested in these characters as you play through. Then there is a notable new, a lot of people call it character customization. I'm not going to call that. I'm going to call it character accessories. So the actual character profiles and models, you can choose from like 5 different heads, quite a few different hairstyles, but you're not creating a character where you're going in and modeling the face or anything. What you can do is you can accessorize your soldiers quite well. There's all kinds of different accessories, from sunglasses, mustaches, beards, hairdos, shoulder pads. You can modify their weapons, you can modify their outfits, you can do all kinds of little things like this. And the higher rank they are, the more accessory options you get. Now, me personally, not a big deal, big fan of this stuff. I like to let them evolve naturally. They will, on occasion, you'll see them change out their gear if you don't mess with them for a while. They'll come back, and as they rank up, they'll suddenly have sunglasses and they didn't have it before, and these little things. And I like to let the game do that on its own, because now they have a generated personality. And to me, that's a little more interesting. It's also easier on me. But if you want to really get in there and give this guy a fedora that's camouflage color, and that guy mutton chops and Elvis Presley sunglasses, you can do all of that if you want to. And it really does make your soldiers feel as part of a team that you're concerned about when you put all this together. Gameplay wise, beyond what I was talking earlier about how there's new abilities you have to take account for, new weapons you have to take account for, beyond that, it's going to be very familiar to what you did before, with the exception of the missions are a lot more focused than they were before. Far more of the missions, and this is going to be one of the areas where some people will find a complaint about, far more of the missions have to do with have timers on them. Basically what they are trying to do is they're trying to eliminate how many missions where you can just really slowly work your way forward and you move up 1 space, Overwatch, move up 1 space, Overwatch, 1 space, Overwatch. And missions could just take really long. There still are a few missions like that you can take your time with. But a lot of the missions, I would say somewhere a little over a third, not quite a half of the missions, have some type of built-in timer mechanic. Be it there's a drop zone that you need to get to in X amount of turns, or there's an object within the map that is being attacked, and if you don't get to it and stop the people from attacking it, it'll get destroyed after so many different turns. Now, if you can like rocket launch and take out 3 guys and then fall back, it'll still get destroyed eventually. You know, some other soldier's going to come along and attack it, but you can adjust how long it'll last. Then there's some missions where there are civilians under attack, and this one was actually kind of pulled from the first game. There are civilians under attack, and each turn at least 1 civilian is going to die, and if you don't save at least so many civilians, and you do this either by extracting them or by killing all the enemies, you're going to lose. So there's quite a few different missions with different varieties. There's hostage extract, there's VIP elimination, where you have to find a VIP and either kill him in a certain amount of time, or if you really are good, you can capture him and extract him and use him for evidence and information later on. And these do a great job of keeping the game fresh and moving forward. Some people, though, are going to have a real problem with this. If you're worried about losing your soldiers, and as we just discussed a moment ago, your soldiers are important, some of these missions can be really painful to play because there's no-win situations, right? Where somebody's going to get left behind. You took too long to make it this far, and only 3 of your 5 soldiers can make it to the extraction point. So 2 soldiers are going to be left behind to die. And that hurts. That really hurts. But that also makes some of the great water cooler type moments in the game that really keep XCOM interesting. You have these tough decisions that you have to make. There's these moments where you have one turn to get to the evac point, and the enemies are bringing in reinforcements. So you're just sprinting, and you have a guy just out in the open sprinting mad across, 5 enemies shooting at him. Somehow he dodges them all and makes it to the extraction point. Or you have 2 guys sitting there covering the extraction. They drop in, grenade them, you lose them right away. There's these crazy moments that some people are going to find really frustrating, but they're also very compelling. That without that agency within those characters, without that need to, that need to try and keep them alive, you wouldn't have. And it just makes for an excellent, excellent experience. The one place where I would actually put a few flaws on the game are mostly the actual system flaws that the game has. The game does have some annoyingly long load screens, mainly going in and out of missions. And if you haven't seen, there's actually a shortcut. So after you evac out of a mission, you finish a mission up, there's this long load screen where the dropship's traveling back to your primary base. If you hit caps lock, it goes instantly. Almost, literally, as soon as you see it, you hit caps lock, within a second and a half, boom, it's up and finished. If you don't hit that, it'll sit there for like 20 seconds. So there's some performance issues with the game in terms of load times. You'll also get the occasional, this has been in from the first game, where you'll get shot through 2 walls, and there's clearly within the game environment, there's no line of sight there, but somehow they'll have line of sight on you, and you can sometimes do this to the enemy. It's a minor thing, very minor in what is overall a very good game, but it can become a little annoying, some of these little glitches. I've had one hard crash, though I admittedly was kind of alt-tabbing in and out, so that could have been my own fault. But that's really my only major complaint, and those things are being addressed. There's currently mods already working to correct some of those things, and that is where Firaxis is now focusing their future development on. As they're probably porting this over to next-gen consoles, they're also optimizing the game back over. I really can't say much more about XCOM 2. If you like the first one, the second one is everything that one had, but better. And it's an easy recommendation. You should buy it if you even remotely like these type of games. If you're on the fence about it, you can go ahead and you can probably wait a few months for them to get some of the performance patches out. You're not going to lose anything there. It is a single player game, so you're not getting way behind the player curve in the multiplayer environment or anything like that. And yeah, it's just all around really, really good. So I think that about covers it. I'd love to hear in your comment, or hear in the comments down below what you guys think. Do you love it as much as I did? What problems do you have with the game? Until next time, though, this has been Paler. Thanks for watching.
Come get some. Got it covered.
Moving to position. Scanning.
Moving to designated coordinates. I'm all over it.
Good copy. Moving on target. Back online.
Here I come. I'm running low on ammo. Evac! We need emergency evac! Now, damn it, now! Oh. Let's do this. Out of rounds.
Headed there now. What do we got here? Status confirmed. All hostiles are down and the area is secure. Status confirmed. Mission accomplished.